You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
How are you doing, Mike?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I have just realized that doing Facebook Lives is different than going on Zoom because it's using the Facebook profile and all my words are backwards behind me. But that's okay.
It looks kind of like hieroglyphics or something from here.
It's actually a super woke like ANCAP statement that if you can decipher that, people, then that would be awesome. Aw.
In a mystical liberty language.
Yes, we actually have some engagements already, which is really exciting. So, where are you at right now, Mike?
So right now I'm at home. I'm at home in Norristown, Pennsylvania. Was just validating some signatures for the Maj campaign before you went live.
All right, that's awesome. So I would like to introduce my guest this evening. This is Sir Michael Heise. He's actually not knighted, so forget that first part. But he is the founder of the Mises Caucus. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Michael.
So, well, I've been an activist in the libertarian community for over 10 years now. I mean, I got started, I wouldn't say I got started in Ron Paul 08, but I got started knowing about libertarianism, I guess, in Ron Paul 08. And I was young, was new to the internet, didn't really know anybody, so I wasn't involved, but I followed him. And I started getting involved shortly before the Ron Paul 2012 campaign in the grassroots. I ended up doing some End the Fed rallies on my own. At first it was just me and my best friend, went to the Philly Federal Reserve and I was bullhorning, about the Federal Reserve. And then, I set up another one and there was like 6 people or 12 people or something like that. And then I set up another one and there was like 40 people. And I realized that I stumbled onto an underground community in Philly called Truth, Freedom, Prosperity, which was a group of ANCAPs, anarchists of different persuasions that most of them supported the Ron Paul campaign, but they didn't have any affiliation with the LP or the GOP. So like Mark Passio was a part of that crew. James Babb was a part of that crew. And we did all kinds of stuff. So like I became an event organizer. I would organize in the feds. I organized income tax events. I was heavy into 9/11 truth back at the time. I'm still a truther, but I'm not like involved.
I have a few questions about that, but that's for later.
Okay. In some ways, I would say 9/11 truth, is what I really started with. And that was when I was like 14 years old. And in some ways, it really helped because when I started learning about libertarianism, the nature of government wasn't a very hard pill to swallow once you've already accepted the false flag thing. You know what I mean? So, so did that, and then after the end of the Ron Paul campaign, I went apolitical anarchist and got involved with like cop blocking, and I did a podcast called The Big Plantation, and would do man on the street interviews with that, and do some stunts, I guess you could say. I got kicked out of a Paul Ryan event.
No, back that up. Please tell us the story. As I have told you, Mike, this is an informal setting, and we like to be silly here. We, meaning me, and maybe my kids.
So this is, I have the video of this on YouTube, actually. So me and my buddy Keith, I used to work for him. We left a job site. We were painting houses, and left a job site and got free tickets to go to a Paul Ryan event. And basically, we were in the crowd and just waited for kind of like a lull in the action to shout out, to heckle him, oh, you voted for the bailouts, you're not conservative, this kind of thing. And Keith went first, and Secret Service grabbed him and walked him out. So then I was kind of standing there on my own, and I think they knew that I was with him. So, I went ahead, and I was still pretty good in my Alex Jones face, so I yelled something about like, this dude represents the New World Order, something like that. But people who haven't followed Alex Jones need to understand that it was different back then. Like he really was. Like he was into Ron Paul. He would have Ron Paul on a lot. He wasn't this like I don't want to say alt-right, but he wasn't pro-Trump or the kind of movement that Trump represents.
A right-wing apologist.
Yeah, like I would say that started along with Molyneux right around 2015, like right as the campaign happened. So this was all before that. But yeah, so then they started escorting me out. And then, the funniest thing about that video is we're heckling Paul Ryan. So I guess it's assumed that we were like liberals, so, one guy, you hear one guy yell at me like, why don't you wake up and get a job? And it's like, we're literally covered in paint. You know what I mean? Like I have paint in my hair. Like we came from a blue collar job site. So.
Okay. So you basically are saying you're like a badass anarchist. Is that what you're saying, Mike?
If that's what you want to call me. Yeah. I did go that after they screwed over Ron Paul when the general election hit. And this is also on YouTube. I did go to a polling place to campaign for vote for nobody. So like, people would walk in and I would have paperwork and they're like, oh, I know who I'm voting for. I'm like, this isn't for anybody. It's just, I want you to think about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And basically say like how much debt has to happen, how much wars have to happen, how much regulation has to happen before we all just say like, we don't consent to this anymore. Our rights come from God, not the government. I just want you to think about that. It was fun.
Do you consider yourself coming from the right?
I never thought about it that way. Honestly, I would say I probably have more connections with the left. And if it wasn't for libertarianism, I'd probably be on the left because the way it worked out was me and my best friend Kyle kind of got into the Ron Paul thing together. But he went to like cyber school and I was in high school and, public school and people weren't going down that path. So we kind of went down that path together and he kind of started it, I would say. But he was into like Noam Chomsky and stuff like that. I mean, I was so young at the time that I didn't know left, right and all that kind of thing. But so I would say I would probably have ended up on the left if it wasn't for libertarianism or at least been more drawn to it.
I find that very interesting because a lot of people, there's a little bit of controversy around the Mises Caucus, which obviously you are the founder of the Mises Caucus and I'm a member. I'm an Ohio Mises Caucus member of the Libertarian Party here in Ohio. So what would you say to those people that think that it's some kind of like right-winged, hard-lined caucus? Would you like to address that?
That they actually don't think that and they're just saying that to push a narrative so that people can hate on us. Like that they don't actually think that. They haven't actually, talked to anybody. They haven't actually read anything on the website. They don't actually believe that. It's just a narrative that they're chasing.
Okay, then I'm going to ask you a hard question right out the gate. Because as you know, I'm part of the We Are Libertarians network. And I have a friend in there that says that this was something you did to kind of kick back at Sarwark, which I'm going to have him on next week and want to give him a really fair interview. But is there any truth to that?
To what?
To you forming the Mises Caucus to kick back at Sarwark.
No, but I can understand why people think that.
Okay.
I can absolutely understand why people think that. And I have the documents. I have the proof. You can look at you can go into hashtag Mises Caucus and if you go to the very beginning of it, because I don't use hashtag Mises Caucus anymore. Like I use Take Human Action for anything that I want to put a hashtag on. So there shouldn't be too much in hashtag Mises Caucus. So if you go to that, you will see that I've been kicking this idea around way before, like a couple months before the beef really heated up between like Sarwark and Woods and stuff like that. Now, here's what happened. It was again, I can understand why people would think that and why you might not believe what I'm about to say, but I swear to God, it's the truth. I don't use Twitter, right? So I had been kicking around the idea of the Mises Caucus for a while. And then finally I just said, screw it, I'm going to make it. I'm going to do it. And I made the group. Well, it just so happens that I made the group while Sarwark was calling Tom Woods a Nazi on Twitter. So like I kind of organically, accidentally absorbed the fallout from that.
Okay.
And did I do it as a pushback, because he said that? No, it's something I've been kicking around for an idea. But at the same time, I do think it's something that needs to be pushed back against. I mean, we call ourselves a big tent party. We call ourselves, the Libertarian Party, and yet leadership seems to spend more time attacking libertarians that he doesn't like than the government that actually restricts our rights.
Okay. So do you think that there's a place in the Libertarian Party? And for all my fellow anarchists, I'm talking party politics. Get over yourself. Don't hit my DMs with voting as violence. I just have no time for that. But do you think that there's a place for what is considered left libertarians in the Libertarian Party?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we should have a healthy competition to figure out, you know, which one, like which branding works, who can bring in the most productive people, all of that kind of stuff. I would not consider socialists to be left libertarians. Right. I would generally consider left libertarians who are more concerned with like civil liberties and that aspect of things. That absolutely has its place. And I've never said anything to the contrary, but I do think that there's certain issues with the different strands of libertarianism that are more complicated than people have really thought, given that we have the Dallas Accord that basically makes it so that all types of libertarians are welcome, from minarchist to anarchist.
Right. Well, and I think that's important. So I think that maybe you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, identifying left libertarian as more concerned with maybe LGBTQ rights or
right.
that type of thing, which they're absolutely libertarians. I happen to be a practicing Christian, but I will defend, you know, somebody's right to not be not to have their civil liberties taken away because they're gay. I think that's really weird. So I think maybe definitions play a big part in that. But as far as the Mises Caucus goes, so you've had some success for sure.
There we go.
What do you do with your lights? You're gonna like dance now? What's going on? Are you gonna have a disco?
I saw all like that weird flashing in my glasses. It was annoying me. So.
Okay. We have some great engagement. Actually, I did have a question from a friend of mine. He's actually running, I believe, for town council. I'm sorry, James, if I got that wrong. He wanted to know what your favorite sports ball is.
So I have, one is not sports ball at all. It's sports fist. I like basketball and I like boxing. Okay.
Boxing is a horrible sport.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's the sweet science.
How?
And that's what it's always been called by, because what's really great about boxing in general is it's actually a metaphor and a microcosm of life itself.
Go ahead, explain.
Well, I mean, you go in there, so unlike it being a one-on-one thing, it's just as much internal as external. It's how much are you willing to take and how much are you willing to give? You know, how far are you willing to push yourself? And that's very much so about life. And if you have a path in life, if you have a meaning and a purpose in life that you've chosen to stake out, it works very much so the same way. Life is a fight. You know what I mean? We're always fighting against the negative aspects of life to pursue, you know, meaning and happiness. And how much can you take and how much can you give will determine how far that you can go.
Okay.
I mean, these people literally walk into the ring and have wars and walk out with less of themselves physically than when they went in. You know what I mean? Like it's really a sacrifice that these people give. And I just think it's fascinating.
Do you think that's smart?
Well, yeah, they make millions of dollars. and lots of times, and that's another thing. So like, my favorite boxer, the person that got me into boxing, is Manny Pacquiao. This guy was literally starving on the streets of the Philippines, like 110 pounds, you know, on the end of a civil war, and through boxing became a complete living legend, to where when he fights, the Philippines just stop. Like, crime in the Philippines just stops for the night. You know, and he's probably going to be the president. Now, I don't agree with his politics, but the point is that he has made hundreds of millions of dollars and feeds and houses a whole shitload of people. Like that's pretty admirable.
So I think that maybe you prefer boxing because it is an independent sport. It's one person, and you like the story of that character, probably.
Well, I like that, but like I said, I also like basketball. I'm a big 76ers fan.
Yeah.
Trust the process.
Sports balls. If you want to watch the best sports cast out there, the best sports podcast, because I don't know sports, it would be Sports Ball by Mike Maharrey and Alan Mosley. That's a libertarian sports ball show. I'm just plugging them because I love them and I can do what I want because
they're great guys.
Yeah. Okay. So now we want to talk about something a little bit new for the Mises Caucus, the PAC. Tell me your objective, what's going on with that, what you're doing with it.
Right. So Mises PAC, we recently launched it. So what that is it's what's called a hybrid PAC. So what that means is there's one committee, two bank accounts, and each of those bank accounts basically serves as a different type of PAC. So you have one bank account that serves as what we call a traditional PAC, and one is a super PAC. So if you've seen me making posts on Facebook like, oh, you can become a recurring donor, the money that we're raising that way from our recurring donors is going to the traditional PAC, which is essentially candidate support money. We actually just voted for our first expenditure to send I should say the other boards of directors just voted for the first expenditure to give $1,000 to the Maj Toure campaign. And in a month and a half's worth of time, we didn't spend a nickel on paid advertisements or boosts or anything like that. We're already making $1,100 a month in that account. So the goal with the traditional PAC is to give direct financial assistance to local and county level LP candidates across the country. And then, so the other side of it, the super PAC, how we plan on filling that out is ad revenue, proceeds from the stores, and our big donor base, which means I'm going to be making calls here to do that soon and all that kind of thing. But what we want to do with that is I kind of want to emulate what Young Americans for Liberty does with Operation Win at the Door, which is, for anybody that doesn't know, so Young Americans for Liberty will go through their process to pick a state house candidate and to bet on, basically. And once they do that, they will then hire a team of students from their YAL chapters to go out to that candidate's district and say, all right, we've paid for your housing for a month. Here's, I think, $2,500 or something like that for the month. Here's your walk list. You have to knock on 30,000 doors 3 times. And that's how they win. And they've gotten 38 wins out of like 75 or so races that they've been in, which is and it's their first year that they've done it, which is very, very good. So I kind of want to emulate something like that, but at the same time, because our focus is at the local and county level, for the most part, I don't think it'll make sense to do that for campaigns. For certain campaigns, it will, like Maj, because even though that's a local level campaign, it's like the 6th largest city in Pennsylvania.
Right.
So, but what I wanted, so my point is I want to do it more for causes, so ballot initiatives, lobbying efforts, stuff like that. So a good example of that I've been plugging a lot is the psilocybin or psychedelic mushroom initiative in Denver, Colorado, where they actually did decriminalize mushrooms. We got involved with that before it was ever on the ballot, right? And so I actually reached out to the executive director of that. His name's Kevin Matthews. And at the time when I reached out, he said I was the first libertarian to have reached out to him.
Huh.
And so that kind of pissed me off. So we got him around on some podcasts. We got him on Lions of Liberty. We got him on Tom Woods. We got him on Free Man Beyond the Wall with Pete Raymond. And
Pete Mance.
Then Pete Mance.
He's
Pete
always
Raymond.
Mance.
I'm still trying to adjust myself. Now you're throwing me off. So we did that, and then our organizer in Colorado ended up getting him in front of the LP of Colorado. They passed a resolution to support it. He was able to recruit some volunteers, and they knocked doors and they helped get that effort on the ballot and helped promote it after that as well. And the initiative passed by less than 2,000 votes. So I think that effort really actually counted for something, and what's cool about that is there's been ripple effects already, because that was only like, a month ago? But there's already been ripple effects. One, in my conversations with the executive director, last conversation I had with him, he was identifying himself as a libertarian now. So that's one. And two, it blazed a trail. It set a precedent. So like 3 weeks after that happened, or 2 weeks after that happened, Oakland, California then passed an ordinance and upped the ante. They didn't just decriminalize mushrooms, they decriminalized all natural psychedelics. So they decriminalized psilocybin mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca, ibogaine, peyote, everything natural. And on the tail end of that, like a few days later, I was reading articles that said that there's over 80 organizations that reached out to them saying, hey, give me the language. Hey, how did you do it? Hey, how do we organize something like this?
That's
so
awesome.
This is something, right. So this is something that's spreading, and we got in on the ground level with an issue coalition. and we can now, learn more and get our people more involved around the country and and not only get the electoral victories where we can get them, but also interact with people who are already active in a political sense and give them our philosophy and see who we can pull towards our side.
I think that's an amazing goal. I'm really glad you brought that up because part of the reason I joined the Mises Caucus was not necessarily for that. I mean, I'm already an active member of the LP, and there's great people in Ohio. Unfortunately, we have an uphill battle. I'm sure you know,
I've heard some stories.
Being from a neighboring state, it's really difficult. The R's and D's, being in a swing state, they hate us like tremendously. And so I think that's really cool. I think part of the reason, and we can touch on this, that I'm still active in a political party, because I was a hardcore neocon, and a lot of people, political parties are for status and this and that. But I think there's such an opportunity and such a platform and a bullhorn. And then, like you were talking about these initiatives that you helped support and bring awareness to. We had issue 1 in Ohio. I'm really freaking sad that didn't pass, but the LP did make strides to bringing that towards people. And I think issue voting is super important. And I'm really pleased to hear that you're working on that.
Let me kind of veer off to the side on the whole anarchist thing, because I was an apolitical anarchist. I just want to remind the anarchist crowd that anarchy is a Greek word for without rulers. Mm-hmm. Well, you have rulers, and it doesn't matter if you know that they're illegitimate or if you can philosophically invalidate them or not. They have the guns, they have the power, they have the perceived legitimacy. And in the end of the day, that's all that really matters. So in a sense, anarchism in the world isn't real. It only exists as a philosophy. So I would say
it exists here and here.
It exists as a philosophy, but I would say in the world, abolition precedes anarchism.
True.
And you aren't going to have abolition if you don't engage.
Well, and I would say definitely like places like the 10th Amendment Center, nullification in itself is anarchy. It's saying I don't agree, right, and I'm just not going to do it. These are we're actually partnered with the 10th Amendment Center to help with guys.
Yeah, they're great, yeah. And we're partnered with them on the Super PAC side of things, on the the Issue Coalition side of things, and they're actually going to be making a video series at my request to train
Michael
people.
Bolden. Hey, Mike Meharry.
Well, they're going to be making training videos. So like, here's how you build a coalition. Here's how you influence your city council. Oh, here's Michael Bolden calling city council about an issue, and here's how you should handle that. And all that kind of things that we don't have in the party. We have a very serious lack of infrastructure, and that's one of the things that we as Mises PAC are trying to address.
Well, and I think also we just don't have the numbers, which I've appreciated the Mises Caucus, because I think we're bringing in new people, and then being on the ground here in Ohio with some of my like Mises Caucus fellow members, we're kind of about doing something really organically and locally and making like relationships and doing real things. And I think that's really important. We don't have this huge national party where we'd have one, but it's not huge, where we just have the benefit of
or
people,
effective.
Yeah. Or just the benefit of people just picking one or the other. Like people will just pick RD because they have this, idea that you have to pick one or the other. We don't have that benefit. Like we have to bring people over, and the best way to do that is on the ground.
Well, it's on the ground, but I also think that this is actually the power of the Issue Coalition strategy, because it's one thing to explain the ideas to people and them thinking of it as theory. It's another one to become an example, basically. It's another thing to actually go out. So, for example, here in Norristown, I'm trying to lead by example here at home and decriminalize weed here. And the reason I picked that issue is because I have no hope on something like a tax issue or anything like that, because 70% of the voting population is Democrat and the entire city council is Democrat.
Right.
And when I say Democrat, I mean like a couple weeks ago, these guys voted for a resolution to make Norristown completely green energy by 2050. I have no idea how they're going to do that, and they didn't do it with any public debate. But that's my point. So it's not like, oh, I just chose weed because, but my point is
I think it's a winnable argument right now. And actually, I mean, if you look at the dominoes that would fall, it could be a very successful as far as like bringing families back together and really kind of changing
here's the thing is so I walked into my first city council meeting, and I introduced the chief of police attends those meetings. I introduced myself to him, and I just threw it out there, and I said, hey, what is the state of decrim around here? And to my shock, he went off on a rant of like, I don't know, but it's time, like we got to stop locking people up for this and blah, blah, blah. And, nobody's done the work, but if somebody did do the work, I would be down with that. And I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? So all I did was I went and so here in Pennsylvania, we have a medical program, but we can't pass legalization because Republicans control both the House and the Senate, and they control all the committees. So even the ones that supported the medical, not a single one will vote for recreational, even though our property tax situation is like absurd. And so the Democrat Party of Pennsylvania in 2017 made it a part of their policy platform to legalize weed. So I brought that up. And but because of that Republican situation, the move has been to decriminalize weed in as many areas as possible. So it's decriminalized in Philly, it's decriminalized in Pittsburgh, it's decriminalized in Harrisburg, it's decriminalized in State College, it's decriminalized in the biggest city of Amish country, which is Lancaster. Mm-hmm. And that was the one that I found that had the least restrictive. So I took that language and basically just superimposed, municipality of Norristown over city of Lancaster, and went to the city council meeting, spoke to why I think this should happen, followed up by emailing the language to all of them, and then just keeping on them, and then they invited me to a workshop because to have a more in-depth conversation where there's a back and forth. And, I printed out the language, gave it to everybody, and brought out the best weed lobbyist in the state, a guy named Les Stark with an organization called the Keystone Cannabis Coalition. And now it looks like they're going to do it. And not only does it look like that they're going to do it, I think they're going to throw it into committee to add language for expungements, which would make it the best decriminalization ordinance in the entire state.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing. And I think if you could maybe touch on, I'm kind of going off on a different path here, but maybe a lot of people are newer to libertarianism. I have an open page, and so I just have a lot of conservatives that join. Can you maybe speak on, because this is an issue you're passionate about, the difference between legalizing and decriminalization?
So decriminalization just basically means that you're not going to go to jail for it. So it's still technically a crime, but it's what's called a summary offense. So you're not going to get arrested. It's like getting a ticket for jaywalking or something like that. So with this one, it's a $25 ticket, whereas legalization is allowing it to be in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. So with decriminalization, you can't do research, you can't do a business, you can't sell it, stuff like that. Whereas with legalization, you can, albeit it's open to government regulations. But I would say that is the superior option because people need this market. People really do need this market, even if it's artificially more expensive than it ought to be because of regulations and taxation. So people need access to these things. So
you think legalization is superior to decriminalization?
Yeah, because your average person isn't a fuck the government anarchist. I'm going to do what I want anyway. And they're not going to take that risk. The average person, unless you're dealing with like a cancer patient and they got nothing to lose type of thing. But if you want the average person to be a little bit more free and have access to these markets, then that's the unfortunate reality of what comes with legalization.
I would actually agree with that, and I think Ohio is a really good case study of that. Our marijuana laws are quite ridiculous and backwards, especially, we're not a super red state, in certain areas, but obviously we're a swing state. I find it really, our marijuana laws are so backwards, and I think obviously it's because of the state control and pharmaceutical companies lobbying, but the fact that I can talk to people on a daily basis. I work in customer service, and I would say 99% of people think that they should be able to go out and purchase marijuana or cannabis at their own free will. Which just goes to show that the population has nothing to do with what the state does,
Right.
So.
And as far to go back a little bit, I don't think people realize how important the shroom thing is. This isn't just
inform us.
This isn't just I get to trip balls now, like type of thing. Like that's so the reason what gave shrooms the legitimacy to become. So personally, I think psychedelics generally are going to be the next domino in the overall drug war. And what happened to even create this crack for them in the first place is that the FDA has designated both shrooms and MDMA, which is the active ingredient in ecstasy.
Okay.
The FDA has actually designated both of those as breakthrough medications. And in the case of shrooms, it's because so there's been a lot of research over the past 20 years, a lot of it being headed up by the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, to show that it has profound therapeutic potential for the big three of psychological ailments. So anxiety, depression, and addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave it to they did clinical studies where they gave it to end-of-life cancer patients, and like 70% of them were able to be more at peace with their situation, and more accepting of their situation. They gave it to, multi-decade-long cigarette smokers, and 70% of them quit,
Wow.
stuff like that.
I was unaware of that.
Yeah, it's going to be, in my opinion, so in the clinical studies, it's not like they're just giving people shrooms. It's a controlled environment, and they're mixing it with therapy. And then they take surveys with the patients. And one of the questions that they ask these people is they ask them to rate the spiritual significance of the experience that they went through. And the majority of people actually rate this as one of the most spiritually significant experiences of their entire lives, on par with the birth of their first child or death of their first parent.
Holy cow.
And so here's how that plays out. Like when it gets legal, let's say. So how many people are on pills for anxiety, depression, and addiction? A whole shitload, right? Mm-hmm. Now how does that work? You go to a doctor and you get a prescription. How many people in one day can a doctor churn out prescriptions? Mm-hmm. 10? 15? So your average shroom trip is going to last about 4 to 6 hours, meaning that if you open up a new field of specialized jobs, psychedelic therapy, once you do some preliminary, therapeutic, why am I drawing a blank on a very basic word? Appointments. Appointments with clients to kind of get them comfortable, get their case load set. But if you actually do the shroom therapy, the average doctor is probably seeing 1, maybe 2 clients in a day. So let's say that takes 10% of the market from those 3 ailments. Mm-hmm. How many jobs is that? You know what I mean? Like, that's of specialized work.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I had not thought of it from that perspective before.
I personally think that, and in the case of MDMA, that got granted as a breakthrough medication because it's having a rapid rate of success with PTSD. Yeah. So it's basically making and when I say depression and PTSD, I actually mean treatment-resistant depression and PTSD in the clinical studies. So they're actually
that's a lot of the comments. A lot of people have been actually commenting that it's an amazing treatment for PTSD. And I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of ignorant of that. It's obviously I believe in the decriminalization. And
so before psychedelics,
but
before psychedelics fell victim to the drug war, MDMA was being used in couples therapy, because and the reason it looks like that it's so effective with PTSD is it allows these vets to talk about things without re-traumatizing themselves, when under a normal state of mind they do re-traumatize themselves and re-experience it. But this puts them in a state of mind where they can deal with it, then as long as it's a productive session, they can take that with them when they come back to the normal state of mind.
I want you to send me some information about that, so us here on the ground in Ohio can work on that. So please do that.
Got it.
But we're going to move on from drugs.
Yeah.
That was fun. That was really interesting. So went on to your objective for the Mises Caucus. I don't think we're going to hit a game tonight because we're actually having really good discussion. I'd rather just have that. I normally
all business.
Yeah, because I'm super professional. But I will have you back on to play Pick Your Poison. But you are, would you say that you are his campaign manager, Maj?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
It's important to,
okay.
It's important. No, the reason I say that is because I am the chair of a federally filed PAC. It's actually rather important to make the distinction that I am and only ever can be a volunteer.
Well, here you go. You heard it here, folks. We'll probably hit a decent amount of numbers here. He is not a campaign manager, but you are supporting him as a volunteer. So number one, what did you see in Maj? And what are you trying to accomplish in helping his campaign?
So what I saw with Maj is exactly what he tells you his role is. He talked a lot about, when he does his talks for Black Guns Matter and when he talks to libertarians, he's talked a lot about this idea of emissaries. And one of my favorite things about Maj is that he's very easy to talk to and blunt, and you can have conversations with things that some people might be worried about offending people, and he gets where you're coming from, and it's just a nice conversation oriented around how do we solve this problem. So, for example, it's just the fact that in certain, and this isn't me, this is Maj, like it's just the fact that in certain inner city communities, you are going uphill against a lot of anti-white racism. It's just a fact. And because of that, libertarianism is going to automatically, because a lot of these people are basically conditioned, from school, from media, from the fact that they have been put into a artificially dependent situation and I would argue by design. That incentivizes them to vote this way, and if they vote for the left, that means they're going to be exposed to left intellectuals, and that's why they know who they don't know who Walter Williams is, but they know who Cornel West is, and that type of thing. But anyway, because of that, you and me, if we go and try to preach libertarianism, we're going to get dismissed as racist, on the right, pro-Trump, whatever.
That's understandable, though. I mean,
I think so too.
I wouldn't say it's okay. I think it's understandable.
Right, exactly. And so Maj talks about this concept of emissaries, that we need people from those communities that those communities trust, who look and sound and talk like them, to translate our message to them. And that the fact of the matter is that a lot of these people already have natural proclivities towards most libertarian ideas.
Well,
the idea of being a hustler is actually pretty capitalist. It's just, they've been essentially regulated out of access to entrepreneurship, and it's not like they don't lock their doors. It's not like they don't arm themselves. It's not like, it's not like they don't understand that they have to be responsible for themselves. And it's just, they don't have any leaders that are teaching libertarian ideals.
Oh, that's by design, yeah.
Right, but Maj is breaking that mystique. Almost single-handedly, he's breaking that mystique. So what he's done with Black Guns Matter is he goes to these communities. He just raised $200,000 while campaigning for Black Guns Matter, by the way.
That's awesome.
And so what he's doing is he is setting up workshops in cities where no other Second Amendment organization will go. The NRA is not going into Harlem.
So this is my show. Fuck the NRA. Fuck them hard.
Right, but I'm just making the point is most people, when you say Second Amendment organizations, they're going to think of the NRA. Well, the NRA is not going to Harlem. They're not going to Compton. They're not going to West Philly or North Philly. They're not going to these areas, but Maj is.
Good.
And he's opening up these conversations because, again, in some of these cultures, the conversation around guns is different than what me and you might have. I've personally had people from these communities tell me, oh man, the Second Amendment wasn't written for me. Those people own slaves, so it doesn't apply to me. Or there's gang activity in the inner city, so they see it as associated with gang activity instead of self-defense.
Right.
And it's going to be difficult for an outsider to break that barrier, and Maj is doing that. So that's what I saw with him. And now he's breaking the barrier, not just on gun rights, but he's becoming more and more libertarian as the process goes. And he is able to talk to these people in a way that you and me can't.
I think that's amazing, and I think that you said that very well. We can pretend that there's some type of translation of liberty to every single person, and in a way, we're all born libertarian, we're all born anarchists, but we live in a state of society, and we live in a society where government and media, we group people into certain groups, and breaking through that's really difficult because there's such a control. Like media, it completely controls the idea that the inner city, there's gun violence, that these people shouldn't have guns, where the liberty movement could really bring about a lot of positive change. But if I'm going in there as some like red-haired white girl that lives in the suburbs, why the hell would they listen to me? You know,
right.
I wouldn't listen to me. So I think that's an amazing point.
Yeah, and Maj is very open to having us give him information for the purposes of it being translated. So, like, for example, I just gave him a book by Walter Williams called Race and Economics, How Much Can Be Blamed on Discrimination. And the point of this is that you will see members of the left, and again, a lot of the black community is voting with that demographic. So you will see arguments there that, oh, racism is what keeps blacks out of jobs, or racism is what makes them have a proclivity towards welfare, or racism is what's keeping black youth unemployment at 50%. And I'm not saying that there's no element of that, but it's not the primary element. It's not. And but the thing is that you can bumper sticker things that way and stir up people's emotions and lead them by the nose with stuff like that. You can't you can bumper sticker that, but you can't bumper sticker this, which is to say that back during Jim Crow, despite Jim Crow, blacks were entering the middle class at a rate not far different from whites, or even higher than whites. Despite Jim Crow, despite the fact that the schools still sucked.
Yeah.
So the reason for that is because back then the cities weren't as regulated and taxed the way they are now. So there was actually blue collar jobs that provided a middle class existence.
Economic freedom brings everybody up.
Right. And obviously the social situation is what it was, but and no one's making excuses for that or justifying that. It was horrible. But the point is that despite that hurdle, that's how strong markets are. Like despite that hurdle, that they were entering the middle class at a higher rate. So now that the regulations have come in, and so the schools are basically producing graduate level illiterates. So if you raise the minimum wage, you're basically cutting off the people at the very bottom from being able to negotiate themselves into a job, and you're basically cutting off the bottom rungs of upward economic mobility, and creating a situation at the bottom where you are artificially incentivizing a choice between the welfare state and other means of making money. And this is where the drug war comes in and is disproportionate. Like, I wouldn't say that the drug war itself, I personally wouldn't say the drug war itself is racist. I would say sentencing.
You know what, Michael? I would, so there's two parts to that. I'm going to interrupt because that's what I do. So I actually had Eric July on before, and he brought a good point. He struggled a little bit, and I understood that. He came from the inner city, but he also thought that people didn't, the drug war was racist, but at the same time, he didn't want to say it was necessarily because people are responsible for themselves. I think that it's both. So I have known. Well,
do me a favor. Define racism, because what I find that people actually mean by racism is they're calling a disparate outcome racist.
No, I don't believe in that. Trust me, I fight fair housing all the time, and they say the outcome of something, even if the intention is different, is racism, and that's bullshit. I don't believe in that. However, just personally, and maybe this is oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't remember. But I have known a lot of police officers. I did grow up in the suburbs, and so I don't have a huge experience until I went down to Nashville and stuff to deal with people maybe in the inner city or things like that. But I know and knew a lot of police officers. I'm not a fan of the police, as anybody who follows me knows that. Fuck the cops, fuck the pigs. I would say that there's an errant racism, especially in the Cleveland Police Department. Probably going to get arrested, but there is racism in the system. There is amongst these band of blue brothers racism for sure. Now, I wouldn't say it's a universal or that it's the complete cause.
I wouldn't say it's the primary cause. I would say that this chain of economic interferences creates such a incentive structure as to make people more likely to commit what is considered crime, even though it shouldn't be crime, which then invites the police presence, which
Thank you, Will. The word was anecdotal, and maybe it is anecdotal. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now here's where I will absolutely say it's racist. I don't have an economic explanation for the sentencing. The sentencing is
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, that seems pretty racist.
look at white people that use drugs and black people that use drugs, and look how much time they're serving. It's pretty freaking basic. But that's in the judicial system and with the cops.
Right.
And so I think that they are trained to be racist, whereas the general public, I would say it goes more to the fact that, we have these entitlement systems in place, and I don't think they're necessarily racist.
I would say that the incentives of the police officers themselves lend itself to people viewing things that way. When you have quotas and you can go into the hood and bust drug dealers, or there's violence associated with drug dealers, right. And that's they arrest over 1 million drug people every year. So like that's a lot of what they're dealing with, and there's a lot of that that's tied to gang activity. So my point is that it's very complicated, mm-hmm. and it's very multifaceted.
Yes.
And it's not as simple as slapping an emotional bumper sticker of racism on something to get people all keyed up. And you can't, and again, this is just another one of the conversations that Maj can open up in a way that you and me can't.
And I would agree. And I think that economic freedom is the best path, because what that will do is change people's hearts and minds. I just will say that, number one, just because I hate the police so much, being like a white girl in the Midwest and having dated a few police officers, and I'm sorry, there's inherent racism in police departments, and also I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that we as libertarians should take head on. This hero worship of the police, it will lead to horrible things, and I don't understand how a lot of libertarians, and maybe they're new to libertarianism, can have this police worship. I think that is the most dangerous thing we can do. And so I can understand somebody coming from the inner city and hating police. I don't like them myself. And I can bat my eyelashes and get out of stuff. They can't do that.
I have a video on YouTube of myself getting arrested because I was filming.
Oh yeah. What's so funny is that cops who are, they have there's these special class of people that hold this gun in the badge. I found overall, they're the least knowledgeable of the law. I know more about the law than a police officer does.
Well, it's because 90% of their job, at least 90%, is just based off of people fearing the power and people cowering. And most people don't push back, and they get so used to that they think that there's something wrong with you if you do just do something besides roll over, know? And it is scary. It really is. I've encountered it many times.
Now imagine being in the inner city and being a different color skin.
Right, but I would say that the problem primarily is the power.
Yeah.
And again, the reason I'm hesitant to claim racism with these things is because the media takes that and ignores the core problem of power and pits us against each other with these race games. And now the public police brutality movement is Black Lives Matter, which it's not that police have too much power or badges grant extra rights. It's cops hate black people.
Right.
When the problem is cops actually kill like 1,100 plus people a year. They steal more money in civil asset forfeiture than burglars rob in a year, and all of these kind of things. So I'm very hesitant, because I think one thing libertarians need to do better on, generally speaking, is how we are socially conditioned to prep us for political purposes.
Well, we don't want our movement to be absconded by the right or the left. And we could take that whole, like, I work with Puncture the Silence in Cleveland. I work with the Young Communist League. My parents are so proud. But I wanted to take that message and say what you're saying. Here's the principles of what's wrong with this. It's not that this inherent racism and that's the entire reason. We just can't be co-opted by the left in that way. But in the same way, when we talk about economics, we can't be co-opted by the right.
this is actually one thing where I would say it's not the left per se. Like the left has that, but it's more the power of the media to divide and pit against the whole divide and conquer
so
thing.
Good at it, aren't they? We need to be better. We suck as libertarians, because I would say that I do like infotainment. Okay, I would not say I'm some kind of brainiac. I'm well read, but I'm definitely not a talking head. We have a lot of talking heads. We need more people that can talk to regular people. We really do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I'm going to go to, I think we're closing in on an hour, which is perfect for a Facebook Live. I've had such a good time. I didn't even play
It goes by fast.
I know. So I want to ask you, what do you see? What are your goals for the future for the Mises Caucus? And then give us your creds. Like, where can people, hook up with us and things like that?
So I just want to keep growing, basically. I want to just keep growing. We have over 40 organizers, and I want to, we don't have them in every state, but we have over 40 organizers total in well over 30 states. And I just want to grow and get people elected locally and at the county level. I want to get liberty initiatives passed where we can. And in the process of doing that, I want I'll be frank, if I mentioned earlier about inter-party competition. I want to win the inter-party competition. I want the Austro-Libertarians to be the branding lead in the party, and I want us to be the engine inside the party that gets the most shit done.
Do you hear that, Dennis? Dennis, do you hear that? Dennis, Dennis Beatty.
Oh yeah.
He's on the Wall Network, but yeah, he was just curious. He had some questions for you. I did ask you one, but he's a good guy.
But there's multiple ways of looking at that. Like Dennis would try to paint that. I think Dennis would try to paint that in a bad way. But why shouldn't we be competition? I thought the whole point was that that competition breeds innovation.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So if I may say so myself, I'm not aware of a hybrid PAC that is aimed at the bottom up of the party long term ever. I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of any other organization in the party that's making $1,100 in a month and a half to help candidates without spending a nickel to get it. I'm not aware of that. So even if you don't agree with the Austro-Libertarian position, which I would say is rather big-tented itself, believe it or not, then that's fine. But I do think that we deserve some respect because we're doing a lot of really good things for the party. We can build bridges and already have built bridges that the party itself has burnt. Now, some people are happy about that, but that I think shows the difference between competition and the toxic element. We shouldn't be happy about trying to burn bridges with Ron Paul or burn bridges. I don't want to burn bridges with left libertarians. I want to burn every bridge with socialists. But my point is that we are a all libertarian group, and I think as long as we have definitions of what makes a legitimate part of the libertarian tent, that we should follow that, and that's it.
I think that's a great point, and I would say I'm somebody that is more of a uniter. I'm a bridge builder, and I'm a member of the Mises Caucus of the LP, and I'm very active in it. And I think that's a good point. And most people I associate with, even I joked about Dennis. He's actually very pragmatic and would love to build bridges with people.
So I use the word Austro-Libertarian, right? So Mises himself was a utilitarian minarchist that upheld the idea of the UN. That Rothbard was a pro-choice anarchist.
Yeah, he was wrong on some things.
They all are.
Yeah, we're human beings. We're fallible.
Right, but my point is that the Austro-Libertarian position itself is it's not just one line, and it's not that simple. And I think there's certain conversations that we haven't had in the party about how diverse it really is. So let's take borders, for example. The truth of the matter is that from what my observation is that there is two different legitimate positions on borders that would recommend different policy prescriptions, but both come from different legitimate lines of libertarian thought. So I would say the open borders position I am
open borders. Yeah.
Right. I would consider myself private borders, but again,
of course. That shouldn't even be. Why are we?
Well, they're two different things.
No, yes. So it's not.
But they're two different things. And I would say,
don't believe in collective ownership, but I definitely believe in private property rights. That's a cornerstone of libertarian ideas.
right.
I don't know
and
why
I would
this
say,
is hard.
Well, because in my opinion, it comes from the fact that there's more than one strain of legitimate libertarian thought. So I would say the open borders position comes from the liberal line of evolution. And I mean that in the historical sense, like the founding fathers, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I think that has come through as the open border position is manifested in this, whereas the private borders comes from the Rothbardian line of libertarian thought.
I love Rothbard, but he was wrong a lot, but I love him.
But or another way of putting it would be the logical deductive line of libertarianism. You know what I mean? And those two things are both legitimate lines of libertarian thought, but manifest themselves and most times they manifest themselves with the same kind of, let's say, policy prescriptions or end goals.
Right.
There's just a couple of them where they don't. You know what I mean? And we have to accept that.
I would even say, because I'm an anarchist, I'm not an agorist. I try to in certain points. I get a lot of shit for voting and being in the political process. And I don't really care anymore. I used to. But I would say that even, scaling back government. So going to like an Ellis Island type of, border control. I'm okay with that because it's better than what we have.
Right.
And so I think pragmatism is really smart. I think that libertarians happen to, on average, and this isn't true all the way across the board, they happen to be a little bit more intellectual people that think a little differently. It's not easy to come to that. There are people that might buck certain mainstream ideas. So all we do sometimes is sit and fight about things and try to be smarter when we're missing the forest for the trees. So, I would definitely work with a closed border libertarian to say, okay, how can we make this better? How can we not put
I would say closed borders is not in any of the legitimate. I don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? Like, and closed borders, like what? No immigration at all? How the hell are we going to do that?
I guess no, that's like nuances. I would say that I'm completely open borders. I'm for private property, right? So if I make a deal with somebody to come and work for me and I'm going to house them, who the fuck is the government to tell me I can't do that? Because they're nothing. But I understand that we live in a world that's, we are surrounded by countries and states and governments. And so I would say
there's a reality problem.
Right.
Yeah.
But that, oh gosh, Lord, that's been like the discussion on my social media for the last 3 days. But anyways, where can we find the Mises Caucus? I know all these things, but let people know.
Well, I'll give a little bit of a lightning round because we have projects that we're working on outside of just the political stuff.
Okay.
So the main website is lpmesescaucus.com. And there's some choice pages there that I would really like people to go to. One is the Meet the Team page, and that's where you can see all of our organizers and contact them and try to get involved. And then there's also the Beginner's Guide to the LP is a page that we have where if you're new to party politics or you're new to being active, this will give you some of the basics of Robert's Rules. It'll give you the basics of the structure of the 3 levels of the LP. It'll tell you about what are committees and how you can get involved. What are some basic projects you can do at the beginning to get started, all of that kind of thing. So the Beginner's Guide to the LP. Okay. We're producing content. We're growing an email list. And so that's the main function of the website. Now, the other projects that we're working on, we just launched askanaustrian.com. So it's a simple email form. If you have any questions about Austrian economic theory, if you have any questions about libertarian theory or libertarian ethics, you can go ahead and use that email form to shoot them over. And we have 4 Austrian economists who have agreed to answer them on camera for us and allow us to publish it. So it's Ask an Austrian. Our store is going to be up any day now, and we got some really cool swag on there. And we're going to be, I got 2 more. So the other project is, or event, I should say, is Dave Smith, part of the Problem Podcast, is going to be debating Nick Sarwark on September 10th. And we are going to be having a fundraiser after party at Gene Epstein's home. Oh, so,
awesome. Can I come to that?
Yeah. So it's just going to be $15. It's a fundraiser.
Okay.
But yeah, so there's that. And then the last one, in my opinion, the biggest and most important one is we are organizing a rally for September 21st in Washington, D.C. called Peace.
Mike, I have
Hell
a
yeah.
group of people coming from the LPMC Ohio. Hello, how are you?
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll be there. So super excited.
So, Peace Over Politics is it's basically a nonpartisan rally. The idea is that we want to get 6 speakers out, 2 from the left, 2 from the right, 2 libertarian, all anti-war, and unite the anti-war camps. You know, and so Scott Horton has agreed to come out and be one of the libertarians, one of the libertarian speakers, and Michael Bolden is going to come and be the MC. So we'll sneakily get the majority. He'll be the 3rd libertarian on stage as the MC. And that's how we'll sneakily get the majority.
That's never happened in the history of ever.
But no, it's really important, you know, because again, like the drug war issue, the anti-war issue, publicly speaking, is owned by the left, and that is just not true. And
they've done a shit job over the last 10 years, to be honest.
Right, but not only that, is it's important that if we get a captive audience, well, think about the crowd. You know what I mean? Like if we get, I don't want to name everybody that we invited, but if we get decent names from left, right, and libertarian. Think about the crowd and the weird mix, you know what I mean? And basically, the right wing people are going to have to deal with the fact that the left people are going to, you know, well, I should say the right and the libertarian people are going to have to deal with the fact that they're going to hear some anti-capitalist shit. Mm-hmm. The left people, the left people and the libertarians are going to have to deal with the fact that they're probably going to hear some lifestyle shit, and everybody else is going to have to deal with the fact that they're going to hear some anti-government shit, and that's just the way it is. Yep. And everyone's going to have to accept that, and it's going to be this big weird melting pot crowd. And
I'm so excited.
and it's a captive audience around what I would consider the most important issue, or one of the most important issues. And basically, everybody gets to make their case. So if we got Scott Horton and we get one of the other people that we're inviting, I think they're going to make the best case. So now we're trying to change hearts and minds through that conversation.
I think that I love that. I think I'm really glad that the Mises Caucus is kind of heading up the 3rd part of this. I would say that it is the most important issue of our time, you know, because we live here in the United States. We're not victims of our foreign policy, just domestic, which sucks sometimes. But the worst atrocities that are happening in humanity right now are at the hands of like our government is literally hitting Holocaust numbers by aiding the proxy war in Yemen. It is the most important thing happening. It really is. And so if we can lead that in the forefront, we could talk about economics all day. I'm always happy to. But yeah, to me, that's the most important issue. And on that note,
one more link, just one last link. The last link. So LPMesescaucus.com, askanaustrian.com, and then misespac.com. And if you are interested in what I laid out as our strategy, a decentralized revolution, you can become a recurring donor for as little as $5 a month. And you aren't at the ground level anymore. We're already making over $1,000. So, you know, we already voted for our first disbursement to go to the Maj Toure campaign. So we are doing what we say. We are helping candidates. We are helping the party. And we hope to be the main engine inside the party.
That's awesome. Michael, I would say thank you very much. Guys, if you missed any of these links, I'll put it back in the comments, put it up on some pages tomorrow. You can just message me and I can send you some of this information too. So I would close out the evening, my lovelies. And this is my first podcast where I'm not with Anarchy Media again. So I would just say grace and peace to you, and fuck the state.